$1,000 a year goes towards massages and therapies and I mean all the freaking gadgets I have. And obviously nothing really has done anything until we've started this whole postural program. I've been 3 times now close to going under the knife, as far as, being to the point of having surgery scheduled. And I haven't had back pain since maybe 6 months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the back pain was gone within the first couple of weeks and not even the slightest inclination of return of the back pain since. I could walk, I could hike, still go to the gym, playing around at golf or going for a walk with the wife or playing in the yard with the kids. Like all that stuff has been pain free. So yeah, I've been good.
First of all, man, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. So I think why don't we get started by maybe you tell us a little bit more about your background, like how old are you, what do you do for work, and how long you've been having this chronic lower back problem?
Yeah, I'm 43 years old. I'm a dentist here in Michigan, and I've been practicing for maybe almost going on 20 years, just a little under 20 years, and don't really think I had any issues for the vast majority of my career up until probably around COVID. I think unrelated directly to COVID, but due to being home from work and kind of having all that extra, spare time on my hands, definitely got aggressive with working out and health and diet and exercise. And so during all that time off, kind of went maybe a little bit too hard in the paint. And then returning back to dentistry once COVID kind of let up a little bit is when I started noticing all the problems. So it started with like hip pain that was maybe more like sciatica related or felt like sciatica. And then it turned into piriformis and kind of outer hip pain. Fortunately, never really radiated down my leg or to like my feet. It was always quad. And then that's when the journey started, just kind of going at every direction I could to kind of get after it with chiropractor and MRIs and injections and robotic therapy and masseuses. And it seemed like the more I did, the worse it got. In particular, I remember the McKenzie stretches, which were kind of like a turning point for where I thought my hip pain actually got the worse. After doing those stretches, that's when I started having all the lower back pain, which I never had before. And then that's when travel got really hard. Planes were a big no-no. Driving was like a, stop and stretch kind of every chance I could. And then kind of followed my heart and kind of took a leap of faith with you via Instagram. I think with you and I working together, the back pain went away almost immediately. That was kind of like a one and done. I feel like my back symptoms were probably more related to all the stuff we did to try to help the hip, and then me just feeling just so tense and everything just being in fight or flight. And so some of the very early stretches you had me doing alleviated the back pain immediately. Fortunately, the back pain was never like chronic back pain. It was just definitely a symptom of the hip pain. And I think a product of me trying to go too hard at helping myself with the hip pain and probably just going at it in all the wrong directions. And I haven't had back pain since maybe 6 months now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say the back pain was gone within the first couple of weeks and not even the slightest inclination of return of the back pain since. The hip pain, on the other hand, obviously has been a pain in the butt. That's been a very slow progress and definitely frustrating. And I've had my doubts with you in the process a number of times throughout the whole journey. But it seems like every time we meet, every time we make a correction, we take another step forward. And even as frustrating as these steps being so small and so spaced out has been, I mean, we're in a much better place now than we were 6 months ago. Feeling really good this week. I would say probably in the last 48 to 72 hours, I've had probably the best relief than we've had in the last 6 months as far as just, when you have pain, it's the only problem you have. All the other problems don't matter. And then when you don't have pain, you forget that you had pain. It almost comes off your mind and you kind of take advantage of it. And it's almost in a subconscious way. You don't even recognize that you don't have the pain. It's just so rewarding to just know it's not there. So I've definitely had these last 2 or 3 days kind of feel like, you're on a vacation or on a, floating on a dream. So that's been really good. But I know we still have work to do. I mean, it's still there, but I definitely feel like we're making some progress.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I know you tried a lot of different things before, like chiropractor, massage therapies, right? So, like, do you know like how much money you spent in this past just to fix your hip and your lower back, just out of curiosity?
Oh man, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it's definitely in the thousands, probably even up to 10,000. I think if you were to look at just the medical expenses alone with some of like the very, very professional stuff, that's easily like 4 or 5 grand between MRIs and copays and injections. The epidural I had twice, the trigger point injections I've had, and everything else I did, like everything else I did, didn't work at all. But thousands, easily. I would say probably more than five, less than 15, probably close to 10 for a fair assessment.
That's
And that
tough.
was probably 5 years. I would say a couple $1,000 a year goes towards massages and therapies. And I mean, all the freaking gadgets I have from Rights and hip hooks and Theraguns and foam rollers and, Castle Flex. I mean, you name the device version table. I've bought it all in the last 5 years, hoping that like one of these things is going to do the trick. And obviously, nothing really has done anything until we've started this whole postural program.
Yeah. Now, so kind of adding on to that, what would you say the biggest difference between all the exercise or everything we're doing versus everything you ever tried before?
Like ironically, looking back, I never really understood what you were doing. Even with my medical background, I always felt like you were playing, chess and I was moving checker pieces. It always felt like you were having me do something that I didn't really fully comprehend why or where it was going. So a lot of it I think did instill some doubt because I was always wondering like, why am I doing this or why does this matter or how is this going to help me? And so I think that with what I've done with you, it was much more of a process and it involved patience, which I have very little of. And then everything else in the past I've done that didn't work was always like a quick fix. Don't worry, I got you. This is easy. I've seen this before. And so like for all those things that I attempted, there was never a quick fix. I think to my fault, I've always been overly committed to things, and I'm a definitely, I'm definitely a try hard when it comes to, hey, you want me to do something, I'm going to do it and go all out and commit to it. And so I did commit to all those other things we did as far as the programs, but none of them really seemed comprehensive or none of them really seemed like they were the full picture. And so like with this, now that we're 6 months into it, I'm starting to recognize, why the abs work and why the chest works and why the breathing matters and why my central nervous system is part of this and why when I'm anxious or fight or flight or having a bad day it flares up. Like all those things are now starting to kind of come into a bigger picture and make sense, whereas before I thought they were all kind of their own individual problems. But now I'm definitely recognizing and seeing how they are definitely very connected, as far as walking and gait and foot and posture and standing and sitting and breathing. And, we never looked at any of that stuff prior to meeting you. It was always, oh, you've got this muscle or, oh, you've got this tendon or, oh, you've got, this symptom, and never really felt like I was being treated. Like, I don't think there was ever really any discussion about breathing and calming nerves and getting your posture and your ribs stacked and all the stuff that you and I have worked on. I don't think really made sense until I met you.
Yeah,
Oh, I
absolutely.
away from it now. It's actually annoying because anywhere I go now, whether it's social media or friends or family, they're all speaking this language that I'd love to just put behind me and not have to worry about or talk about anymore and just kind of move on with my life. But I'm constantly reminded. I'm constantly seeing feeds on my social media about this posture coach and that posture coach, and so now you definitely feel like it's a thing that otherwise before I met you it didn't really seem like it existed at all. But it's everywhere and it's there, and I definitely believe in it, and you've definitely made me understand it. So it's working. It's a process for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of add on to that because now I know you try a lot of different things. So now I would say, like, what was your mindset before joining the program? Were you pretty skeptical, or like if you were pretty skeptical, like what made you want to, I guess, take that leap of faith?
I'm not usually that skeptical of most things. I'm pretty open-minded about most stuff, even as like a practicing physician or a clinician, when it comes to medicine. You think I'd be very, very science-based and very evidence-driven, but I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to like holistic and homeopathic therapies. And back in the day, I'd always look at some of the stuff and be like, oh man, that's, voodoo medicine or that's kind of hocus pocus. So I'm not really much of a skeptic. I think when I heard about your stuff and I saw it, like anyone spending money on anything, you're going to do your due diligence and have, some of the criticism that, I most definitely had some of, but I never really felt like it was a big leap of faith. It was like, hey, I've done anything and everything under the sun at this point and nothing's worked. What do I have to lose? I've been 3 times now before meeting you close to going under the knife, as far as, being to the point of having surgery scheduled. So I would look at that as like the ultimate throwing in the towel, the ultimate kind of give up, as far as like all the other alternative options you could exhaust leading up to surgery. When it came down to all these other things I've tried that were painful or risky or carried irreversible damage, I felt completely comfortable doing all those things. And so with your program, it was much easier, if anything, because I was like, what do I have to lose? At first I was like, all right, you can teach me how to breathe. Like I can undo that, I'm sure. Or if you teach me a different way to breathe, I'm sure it's not going to really compromise it or make things even worse. So I didn't really ever feel like I had a lot to lose. But I mean, I was also at the end of the road and pretty exhausted. And, we all go through some of those mental challenges too when it comes to, the depression and the anxiety. And, there was days where I didn't want to go to work or I was scared to go to work because I knew I was going to have to go home in pain. I'd avoid doing things with the kids or the family because I knew it just wouldn't be worth the agony and the pain afterwards. And so you try to always take the easy road. With your program, and when we got to that stage, no, I didn't really have any skepticism or any kind of hesitation. For me, it was pretty, I wouldn't say it was obvious. I never felt like there was a guarantee and it was going to work. But I was optimistic for sure. I definitely felt like, hey, this could work. Maybe it doesn't. What do I have to lose? It's not that expensive compared to what I've spent on all the other things. Let's go for it. Right. So no regrets.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Can you right now go to work, play with your kid, pain free?
Yeah, so I would argue that the only time I really feel discomfort is at work. Every time that we make another progress through the program, it feels like I get more and more confident about work. And there's definitely been days now where I can go to work and not have pain and get ready for work and not have to fear work causing problems. So that's really the only kind of contention right now is just, getting into the operatories and working on patients and being in that kind of clinical role. Aside from that, no, I don't really feel pain outside of work really at all, unless, I'm driving home from work, itching to get home to do my resets and get to a stretch to help myself. But no, I could walk, I could hike, still go to the gym. You probably don't want to hear this because you told me a number of times not to, but I don't listen really well. And I've still gone to the gym every morning and still do. Obviously, I take it a lot easier than I've had in the past. And I don't think I've done a leg day in probably months, maybe even close to 4 or 5 months, just because I've been so committed to this program. But, as far as like upper body movement or playing around at golf or going for a walk with the wife or playing in the yard with the kids, like all that stuff has been pain free. So yeah, I've been good.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I know you also mentioned about breathing as well. So I think when I do those interviews and when I interview a client is the first component is always teach your nervous system how to calm down and just to learn how to breathe properly, right? So a lot of people will be like super, I guess, confused and skeptical. So now and then later down the line, they feel like, oh, actually breathing is a foundation for everything. So I guess how important it is breathing for you in this entire journey.
Oh man, I think this is where I really feel like friends and family think I'm cuckoo. So like my wife would always tell me like if there was ever like a bomb or a wire to cut or a thing to diffuse that she'd want me doing it because I was always so calm and collective under pressure. And so even like in my clinical setting at work, if there's an emergency or there's something that I have to tend to immediately and resolve in a way where, someone's not bleeding out or something, it's always one of those moments where I'm literally cool as a cucumber. You can't even sense any kind of stress on me. I've never really known or recognized that when I'm under that kind of stress or pressure, that I'm just like internalizing it in a way where I'm not letting anyone else see what I'm going through, right? And I think that kind of comes from owning a business. You are always facing confrontations or challenges, and like you never want to let people know that you're razzed and shaken up or that you're kind of stressed, right? So you always have to kind of keep that kind of composure and then kind of resolve the circumstances so that way you're not creating a bigger problem And so I've just, without recognizing this, always internalized that, where I'm just, not letting anyone know, be able to read my poker face kind of thing. So I don't think it was until halfway through our program when my middle son was hospitalized, and it turns out he just had a virus, and it was creating some weakness in his muscles. He couldn't walk. So it didn't paralyze him, but he had no skeletal muscle function. And so his levels were really high. His body was kind of shutting down. So we got him hospitalized. And so they wanted to do brain scans. And so that 24 or 48 hour period of time before we knew it was a virus and that everything was going to be okay, we didn't know. And it seemed like it was really bad. And Andrea, my wife, and I were really scared about the scans and the results. As you can imagine, breathing anxiety was at an all-time, worse during that 48-hour period. And that was a period when I was working with you where I felt like we were making the most progress early on, because it seemed like the gains were happening quicker in the beginning. Whereas in the past 3 months, the gains have taken a lot longer to kind of compound. And so during that early period when Charlie had his hospitalization, I felt like during that period of time, because of like the piss poor breathing and all the anxiety, I regressed the furthest back I've ever regressed. Like I got the worst, to the point where I think I was like maybe worse than when we started. And it was probably only days after we found out he was going to be fine, and that the virus was going to go away, and that all the damage was reversible, and that he was back out of the hospital 2 days later and nothing had happened, that I got back to like focusing on breathing and kind of getting myself calmed down. And then I noticed like a tremendous improvement. And so that was the first time where I was convinced. I was like, holy crap, I'm in my own way here. Like I'm the one causing this internally with the stress and the breathing and the anxiety and the kind of central nervous system. So that's when I really became convinced. I was like, okay, I gotta learn how to breathe and not essentially let my chest and my abs and my anxiety create more harm than good for the rest of my body. So that's probably when I recognized that, okay, this is, if not 100% a breathing problem, a very, very significant part of it is related to how do I cope with the stress of the day, and how do I breathe through the anxiety. And I'm not an anxious person. Like you ask any of my friends, they'll all tell you like, no, this guy doesn't worry about anything. He's living the dream. And I think to a certain extent, I am a very low anxiety person, except for when I have pain or when I have work stress, and then I don't breathe through it and I just let it compound internally. And then it just creates a body full of tension, right? You're just kind of like uptight, and you're just like in that fight or flight mode. And you get a little short fuse because you are tied up. And I think that's where I've learned to just, okay, get bad news, or, I've got a car in front of me is cutting me off or something. Now I'm at that position where it's like, okay, I take a couple deep breaths, kind of calm the nerves. And I almost immediately notice that there's no response from my body to like get into that fight or flight mode, which causes typically that hit to flare up. Yeah, it's crazy. Like even it's something as simple as just not thinking about the pain. Like if I take my mind off it and I just breathe through whatever's around me and kind of just live in the moment, like the pain's gone. It's wild. But then like you obsess over it and you think about it, and then you get anxious about it, and then you get tight about it, and then you're not breathing, and the next thing you know, the pain's getting worse and worse, and then you're kind of itching for a corner to go lay down and do a stretch in. I think a lot of it has to do with breathing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think for somebody who's maybe watching or listening to this right now, they're on the fence for joining program, but they're kind of looking for like, what would be your recommendation for them?
Honestly, I would say start off with those first three movements that you had me do in that first week. That's really, matter of fact, looking back now, those first three movements you had me do in that first week were kind of like your way of just saying, hey, do these for free, call me in a week, and if you think it's worth it, sign up. If not, then maybe I'm not the person for you. And I think in that first week, the back pain is when it went away. I think that not chronic, I think that period of back pain I had became pretty diminished before I actually even gave you any money. I think it was kind of during that little trial run we had where it was like, hey, just put your feet on the wall and do the 90-90 and let me know how it does for you. And so, yeah, I would say just give those three movements a try. Just try something simple, or try just some of the breathing exercises to kind of get a feel for what's all involved. And then I think if you feel the gains and you gain the confidence I did early on, moving forward, doing more of it becomes quite easy. Another point I'd make is we've been doing this for 6+ months now, we determined, and there's still days where my feet go on the wall and I feel like I'm learning something new about the position, which is crazy to think that I couldn't even imagine how many hours I've done with my feet on a wall doing breathing to this point. And to think that of all those hours spent doing that, there's still little tweaks to it that I could do better or improve upon, or little things that I feel is like, oh, I've never felt that before. I think I'm releasing more tension here than I had before. You kind of like unlock new levels of the game as you go on. And so I think that's one of those things where you start out at the beginning, you do that week of the basic stuff. I hope that your clients kind of get the same kind of gains I had early on. And then next thing you know, you just keep making those gains moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a quick shout out to Michael as well, because Michael has been my client success manager for quite some time. And I know you've been working with Michael for the past couple months as well. So how's your experience working with Michael?
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's definitely down to business, cut and dry, kind of just get dirty. So there's no like sugarcoating or getting around you're not going to get a lot of small talk with Michael. He's going to kind of get to the point and get working. You could tell he's a genius, right? You could tell that he's got a lot going on between those ears. He fully comprehends the body and the systems. And I think for him, it's just hard to communicate all that in 1 hour because he just has so much that he wants to unload, that he's the kind of person you need to spend, 6 or 8 hours in a room with to really gain those insights and fully comprehend what he's trying to get across to you. And then the more I spent with him, the more I realized and gained confident that he was dialed from the go. And I just needed to trust him and stick with it, because as I've done so, I've started to see those gains. I hope all your other clients aren't as difficult as I am. I know that for me, everyone would have liked to see the progress a lot sooner and maybe a lot quicker, but that's just kind of who I am when it comes to, I don't go easy, I don't go light, I don't take days off at work when it comes to, tiptoeing or avoiding things that otherwise I know would hurt me. I kind of just get in there and get through the grind and just kind of muscle through it. And so I think that was a big part of my weakness, not really allowing myself to adapt and to get better. It was almost like I was my own worst enemy through this whole process. I still am. Like today, I literally was at the gym today and I was like, let's just do a light walk. Let's do a cold plunge, hit the sauna, maybe spend a half hour on a foam roll and really go aggressive on it. And I had 2 hours at the gym this morning that I was all dialed up to do all this kind of, light work. And 15 minutes later, I had 80-pound dumbbells in both hands on a bench, laying on my back, being like, what the hell am I doing? Like, how did I get to the bench? Like, how did this happen? And so just stupid stuff like that, right? Like I went into the gym this morning saying I was going to go light, and the next thing you know, I'm doing decline bench press with dumbbells that are probably way too heavy. So I do a lot of stuff like that I know doesn't help, but I'm still making progress and we're getting there.
I mean, like once you're out of your pain, the goal for us is you go back to do whatever you want to do. That'll be the goal moving forward. Of course, it's going to teach you how to do the gym exercise, strengthening part of the exercise differently, so that way you don't get back to where you're currently at, like 6 months ago, right? But now, like the goal for us still going to be once you're out of your pain, just go back to whatever you want to do. But of course, with more knowledge and just to train a little more smart, and that should be it for you.
Yeah, like if you were to ask me what my goal was starting out, it probably would have been to go right back to, the high school weight, the high school gym, the high school sessions, and get back into like that prime shape of my 20s, right? And if you were to tell me right now I can eliminate all your pain, make it go away and never come back ever again, and the caveat was we'll let you go to the gym but you can never do a squat, a deadlift, you could go ahead and do all your hobbies and you could work pain free, like I would sign on that dotted line in a heartbeat. Like my goal now is not to go bodybuild or be that gym rat that just can't give up on some of these movements.
You don't have to do deadlift, you don't have to do squat to train your lower body. That's the things. You can do a lot of different things to burn your glute, to train your quad, to train your lower body, but you don't have to do, all of those, deadlift or squat that really hurts your spine.
Yeah,
So
I don't miss any of those things, right? Like I don't want to do them. I have no interest in doing them. And having all these months off from legs and really focusing on trying to rehabilitate myself, there's a strong yearning to get in there and, knock out some Romanians and Bulgarians and, jump on a bike and do some of the cardio stuff that I've otherwise been trying to tiptoeing around. But truthfully, like I don't think my vision is of like making massive gains and going hard. It's just feeling like I could do what I want and do it freely and do it healthy and not have to always feel like I'm this fragile porcelain little doll in the gym.
yeah, absolutely. Now, I think for somebody who's maybe thinking, can this program all be done online? What would you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm proof. I've never met you in person. We've only chatted by Zoom like this really a handful of times. The majority of our kind of interactions have been through the app, kind of showing me what the movements are, and then with a video demonstrating how to do the movement. Yeah, I think that's another thing I found was pretty impressive was how simple everything really was. Like none of these movements really asks a lot of me. Like you don't need to have kettlebells and a squat rack or a set of weights or, I mean, you name the machine or you name the piece of equipment. Really, everything I've done with you has been with a foam roller. Dude, I think have we done everything with a foam? I think like foam roller is pretty much the only piece of equipment I've used and like a good wall. You got a wall and a foam roller, you could knock out everything we've done the last 6 months with the occasional like weight here or there to kind of just help leverage some of the movements. But by no stretch did it have to be done in person or at a gym or with an extensive amount of equipment. Matter of fact, I'm currently in my office at work. So I'm up in a lofted space above the office, like a little living area with a desk, a computer, and a sofa. And so everything I've done for this program in the last 6 months, for the vast majority, has been done right in this space, with the exception of the stuff I do at home, augment what I can't get done at work, which is also done in a small. Most of the nights when I would do my work or do my resets or stretches, those were usually done in my closet, just so I wouldn't annoy my wife, have my kids disrupt me. So I would, excuse myself from dinner or take a break from the TV show that we were watching as a family. And then I'd go hide in my closet and, knock out 15 minutes of our stretches or our movements, and that kind of became a regular occurrence in the evenings. And then I would do my morning stuff at the gym just because I was a regular at the gym. But the majority of everything else was all done at my office. Very minimal amount of equipment. As far as online goes, no, I think the online portion actually was beneficial, right? If it was just you and I in person, it would just be one static moment of a representation of what you're trying to display. Whereas with, the program, I can't tell you how many times I rewatched videos, and every time I rewatch it, it'd be like, holy shit, I didn't realize that he said this, and I was missing a component of the movement for days, if not weeks on end. And so I still rewatch videos and I still learn little things where, like Michael might say something that has a meaning and I might overlook it thinking maybe it's not as crucial. And it's not until days or weeks after doing the movement that I pick up on what he said, recognizing, oh, that's a pretty integral part of this movement. I have to dig that heel in. I kind of overlooked it when he said it the first time. I don't think you would get that if I was in a room with him. At least not if the room visit was just a single visit, right? It would have to be him, saying this to me over and over and over again with multiple visits. So I think that'd be the only benefit of it not being online is if I saw you every day at a gym or something, right? But aside from that, I did see you every day on a video when I would do the program, even though you and I didn't have to inconvenience each other with meetings and a meeting location and a schedule to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is there anything else you want to add at the end?
No, this has been really good. Honestly, I owe a lot to you guys. It's been quite the blessing to kind of get to this stage where I'm finally starting to feel like, okay, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could probably get emotional about it if I really dig into it. So it feels really good to finally have it, feeling like it's behind me. It's been a crazy road, right? And I'm sure a lot of your clients, you're not alone. There's, I'm sure, millions of people going through exactly what I'm going through. Yeah, it sucks when you can't find an answer and you try everything without any kind of real success. And even with this program, it wasn't a quick or easy fix either, right? It was something that you had to commit to and put time into, and that was the fortunate thing, is that it all paid off.
That's great, man. Like I said before, I'm so happy for you because I know back in the days when you first get started, how frustrated and like deep pain that you don't want to even talk about it. So
Yeah, no, feeling really good. I owe you guys a tremendous amount of gratitude for all the help you've given me. I know we still got a lot of work left to do. I'm excited to get after it and kind of make more progress and, kind of get to new relief and get things completely behind us, but feeling good.
that's cool, man. So that should be it for the interview. Really appreciate you doing this, and like thank you so much for being a great client as well.